It doesn't matter how old these sensitive and psychic kids are. They could be newborns or they could be infinitely older. And with that, I have so much that I could share and so many avenues that I could go down that I could not possibly accomplish it all in 1 hour. But I will deliver what I'm being called to deliver. It is my opinion that a lot more kids are being born that are incredibly open and incredibly sensitive and incredibly psychic. And thankfully, sometimes they're born to families that are also with caregivers in one generation or another that align with that also. Sometimes these kids are tuned in to other realms of experience. Theirs is a vibrational existence, and though everything is made up of energy, all of us, everything, they are fine-tuned to the energetic frequencies. We are body and soul, but these kids are really aligned with the truth of the soul. Sometimes these are the kids where the physical outside noise of the world is not as bad as the internal noise that they are trying to process. They are often skilled at telepathic communication. And it is imperative then that their caregivers, teachers can understand this super quality, this brilliant way of being on the planet that is a blessing. But it's very important then that caregivers speak their truth. That when things are wrong, they don't pretend things are fine. Because these kids are picking it up in countless ways that perhaps it's not. And when you try to hold back the truth from these kids, they're receiving mixed signals. They are perceptive enough, either telepathically hearing the content or picking up the emotions or picking up the sensations of frustration, sadness, depression. So they are either picking that up off of people, places, and things. And so the more that we all come into being honest with ourselves and each other and them, the better off the planet will be. Sometimes these kids need to use headphones and music to focus in on what's in front of them, be it school, classwork, or just being out in the world. A lot of times these kids have headphones happening or music in one ear. I think the most important thing I can share with you is usually these kids know what they need. And again, I'm talking all ages. Some of you viewing this or seeing me now might resonate as a kid as yourself. And it's important to honor their needs to a degree. If I could gift all the sensitive and psychic people, and especially the children of the world, a wetsuit or a raincoat, so that any emotions or feelings or frustrations or words that they know are coming at them, that I wish that it could just wash right off so that they didn't take it in. But I think they're truth seekers, and I think that they've come to help. And I think if you're paying attention now and present and conscious, you're coming to help also. And so this ability of telepathic communication, when someone talks out both sides of their mouth or says everything's fine or I like you, but in their mind they're having issue, those kids are picking up those mixed signals. And so it becomes a very confusing world for them. And then sometimes on down the line, they start to distrust what they're feeling, hearing, knowing, seeing, sensing on a soul level through the soul awareness, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsensation, clairsentiment, all of that, empathic. It's a whole nother thing. They start to believe whoever's saying, no, I feel fine, or no, Dad and I aren't fighting, or whatever it is. They start to believe the external world instead of those internal resources. And then sometimes that can lead to depression, anxiety, shutdown. And later in life, it could lead to different modes of trying to numb, vacate. I wish I could give them all raincoats for a way of being in the world. When I used to teach kids, I would teach them about working with their energy field. The auric field goes out about as far as our hands can reach, but can go out further depending on our intention. And these kids need to learn within themselves to work. They need to, they're energy masters anyway, but they need to work with it. And in a little bit, after I have all of these layers off, I'll give you a demonstration about the auric field. For me personally, I find that it's best to shrink my auric field in when I'm in enclosed spaces, like going down an aisle or sitting side by side someone in an auditorium or a movie theater. For some of these kids, it's imagining their fields moving out as a bubble of light protection. These are great conversations to have with kids, is sensing energy, and where does your energy feel best? Beyond you as a giant bubble, or close like a wetsuit? This was my dad's sweater. He's on the other side. The greatest gift you could give them is unconditional love and a lot of hugs, because sometimes they're not always in their body. Sometimes they are, if you can see my shoes, they have a foot in both worlds. I have a burgundy shoe and a black shoe on. They're in multi-places at once, not just two places at once. They're all over the place a lot of times. So there's a lot of scattered energy, a lot of frustration, a lot of meditation would be a great skill to learn. But what does that look like is going to depend on the child you are or the child you're working with. It could mean moments in nature and walking, or toes in the sand, or sitting in a chair and just breathing and feeling where that breath moves in the body for a few minutes each day till they build their own practice farther, until they, you could actually work with them on little twitches or muscles or sensing, cool breezes on their skin. It's about embodying them in a comfortable way. These are kids that feel somebody touching them from a million miles away. So it's about getting comfortable in their own skin and understanding that their vibration matters and how to work with it. And the only way they can do that is if they can trust you enough with their experiences when they're young, so they could start creating vocabulary to what's happening. God, I wish I had vocabulary to what was happening to me. I was off in my own head, having no words to relate to what was happening in my body and what was happening to me spiritually and psychically, which is the same thing as spiritually to me. The greatest gift you could give is being present, like a nice, yummy hug, and knowing when the hug is right and when for some, they don't want to be touched. They don't want that connection. It's too overwhelming. They'll know. They'll know. Sometimes they want to stay in their pajamas all day long. They don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to meet that person. They don't want to do that or do this. God bless you. Because those are tricky times, right? You know, sometimes it's a matter of crawling in bed too and just snuggling and going, what's coming up for you? You know, and maybe they'll have the courage, or maybe they'll find the words to say, well, when I'm at school, I don't like sitting next to so-and-so. And then you can go, well, why is that? You know, and maybe they say they're mean, but maybe it's not that they're physically or verbally mean. Maybe they're picking up the energy off that kid. Or maybe they don't feel like people really like them at school, so maybe you need to work on play dates or different types of play dates. Or, you know, this is always, I think, a parent's journey of trying to source the answers to help their kid feel comfortable about, you know, going to school. Maybe it's switching schools, maybe it's homeschooling, maybe it's, you're going to know when you know when you know, and you can know what your family needs to do to make whatever adjustments that need to happen. Remember, they're sensing energy off people, places, and things. And so these are often the kids that have their auric field way out and need to sit that far away from everybody else. So maybe off to the side, maybe not in the back, because in the back they might be picking up everybody's energy towards the front, so maybe they need to have front row. You know, where do they perform best, or where do they think they should sit? And probably not going to school is not an option. Because we need these kids educated, you know, in the best of our abilities to meet them where they're at. And so sometimes these kids might be on IEPs because they learn differently, or sometimes they might need to run around on the playground right after school because they've been holding it together, and they need to just run. Or sometimes they need to just sit and read after school. Maybe, you know, it becomes, what do you need? What do you need to teach them to be caregivers of their own soul? Same goes to you. You know, caregivers of your own soul so that you can show up in your life, so that you don't abandon yourself and your own needs. So that they can understand this self-love no matter how many friends they have. I had a lot of friends in school growing up, but there were only certain ones I wanted to sit by when I ate lunch, or certain ones that I wanted to go out with when we were old enough to go hang out. But staying in bed isn't usually an option. Not usually. Unless there's reason. Sometimes the reason is food. These are kids usually, typically, with a high frequency of vibration. And they have food sensitivities or food allergies, or maybe they just don't like certain foods. And I wouldn't push it. You know, as long as they're getting enough nutrition and all the vitals are all good, there's certain things that don't resonate with their frequency. And if you're okay with it, I always encourage a food journal. You know, noticing like, oh my gosh, it's sugar, of course. Or, you know, what is it? And what time of day? I myself and little people that I know that are sensitive and psychic have a lot of, like, you know, they have a lot of intolerances. And so we had to make like 5 different pots of pasta going on the stove just to get everybody so that they were comfortable. Because what happens is when they're eating the wrong things, not only are they getting emotionally and mentally cranky and tired, but they're also, it's throwing off their vibration. You know, these might be kids that are like, oh, I want to be a vegan. Oh, I don't want to be a vegan. Oh, I want to, you know, one week they're like, oh, I'm going to have no gluten. The next week they're like, oh, of course I want gluten, or blah, blah, blah. But it's, I think from an early age, starting a food diary, if you notice after the eating that there's upset, to pay attention to that and know, you know, how can you care differently, or what adjustments can be made to help them get the proper nutrition that they need to sustain them. And so part of this too is because this whole like epicenter is that bundle of nerves that in my work, this is solar plexus. And that area has to do energetically with personal power, self-esteem, who you are and what you came to do. And usually these kids that are coming on the planet now, but have been coming for quite a while, they have big work to do on the planet to shift consciousness, to raise consciousness, because once there's enough of them and they're all working on a vibratory level where they're reading minds, and we all start understanding like, oh, I got to sort this with them. I can't just think this because they're picking it up. You know, we shift who we are. We shift how, not who we are, but how we are, to open up to our own truth, love, not denying what we know or what we're going through, to just placate, smooth things over. I grew up in a household where if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, which is great. That's lovely. That's really lovely. But there is something like, you know, honoring moments of truth talking, constructive, I don't know if it's the constructive criticism that I would want to say, but, you know, words that might help elevate consciousness and bring people to the truth of the matter at hand. And so I at various times in my life, I've had to say, listen, I don't know how this is going to land, but I'm feeling this, so I need to say it. And so forgive me if I'm not saying it right. I'm going to try to say it with the best compassion. So this kind of conversation to the kids and with the kids is going to be fabulous, because if this is solar plexus, personal power, self-esteem, who you are, what you came to do, and this is your heart energy and speaking through love. When you don't speak through love and then you regret it later, or your kids are modeling that and then they're regretting it later and then they feel yucky, then it's going to run through this area of the body, which is relationships, sexual issues, creativity, new beginnings, and also that whole inner turmoil of now I've just added insult to injury because I've said it wrong, and now I feel like muck, and now I wish I would have done better. So the more we teach compassionate conversation and communication, it'll be better in the long run. And trust me, this is a spiritual practice. Ask any of my kids. But this whole thing about understanding what has their tummy in knots. When I was young, I didn't have the words to explain what was happening or what I was picking up from other people, that I might have said, called them creepy or tricky, or I don't want to go near that person. I don't want to sit in that area. You know, it would register here. And the only words I had was, my tummy hurts. My tummy hurts. I don't want to go to school today because my tummy hurts. You know, and there was a lot more to the story. And youngest of 4, 5 and under, boom, 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 all at once. And so, I wish I, as a parent, would have sourced the answers more from my kids instead of going it's called clair-pensée, when you read their mind. And I would often read their mind to figure out what was the story behind the story they were giving me, or what was the truth of the matter. And I wish I would have worked with them more to say, tell me, give me the words. Let me not only show emotional communication and action, and me registering labeling that feeling and naming that feeling. Let me not only do that in my life, but let me encourage you to do it in yours. You know, those lovely charts that they have, you know, angry, sad, lonely, whatever, all these charts. You know, I wish I would have had one of those charts to go, can you kind of pinpoint how you're feeling? Those kind of things. So I think food's important. It's it's a necessary part of care of body and soul, because it also, the vibration of the food affects the soul. And in all chances that you can buy organic, it's good for them and good for the planet, of course, and they know this. I'm going to leave this on because this is like totally my area of where I want protected. So a lot of times I was that, growing up, I was that kid that would eat the trauma, eat the troubles. And so this is still an area that I have to consciously work with. And when I'm gravitating, so you would do this with kids, when they're gravitating or wanting a sugar or wanting a sweet or wanting a certain kind of food, what's up? What's going on? What's happening? To really kind of, instead of reaching for that, whatever it is to reach for the feelings that is bringing that up for you. And the more you do that and the more you model that, the more empowered they will be to function in another way in their life, in a more beautiful way in their life. And so, just really connected to soul self. So I love the shoes. They usually are. They're really body and soul embodied, and we all are that, but they can really teach us incredible lessons as we're moving into this next phase of human evolution and existence on the planet, because they usually are humanitarians or want fair and just and want things better, and are quite irritated with some of the collective behavior of the past that has created such an uncomfortable environment in many ways, socially, environmentally, politically, all of it. And because their hearts are so open and they're so sensitive that they're just really, screaming, crying, why can't you see this? Why can't you do the right thing? And so I think that the more that, and this is a huge ask, right? For teachers and parents and caregivers and grandparents and neighbors and all of us to wake up so that we can help empower them to live the lives they're meant to be comfortable in their own skin, which can sometimes be quite tricky, that comfort. There's times when I think I might have told you this before. My husband is like, come on, let's do the dinner party thing and have 8 couples. And I'm like, oh my God, it's too much. It's too much energy. It's too much for me. It's too much. I'm like, can we go to a restaurant? Because then I can go, okay, I gotta go, or I need to. And so these are the kids too, right? They're the kids that when you go out to spaces or in the classroom or in the restaurant or whatever, where they're like, I'm the girl that usually likes to sit and face the door. But the other night, my husband and I went out to dinner, and I was like, whoa. They put us at a 4-top, so that it would be 4 seats. And they put us opposite and said, where do you want to sit? And I didn't want to sit with my back to the wall looking at the door. I always want to do that. I had to sit kitty corner to him, and I didn't want to see, or no, I didn't sit kitty corner. I often sit kitty corner. I sat opposite him with my back to the room, because this is usually the radar. And it's the same is true for sensitive and psychic kids, although they can feel somebody coming up behind them. And play that game at home. Play that game where you're put on stocking feet and they can't hear you, and have them close their eyes and face whatever, a wall or whatever, and you sneak up behind them and see when they can sense your energy behind them. How far is it? And then practice, and ask them to shrink in their auric field just with intention. Imagine it coming in like a wetsuit, and see if you can get closer, or see if if they push it out, if you can feel it yourself, the energetic kind of threshold of where their energy frequency begins around their body, where their auric field begins around their body. And so these are all great games, but it's really noticing that not only where we sit when we're out and about, that your kids need to really, almost let them pick the right seat. And they might be like, you sit by me, sit by me. And there's a reason for that. Or they may be like, getting anxious at the table, and you have to ask, well, what's going on? And sometimes if they can't figure out words, then I invite you to become connected telepathically to them, to use clair-pensée, which means you go into their thought process so you can understand what they're going through. And don't be surprised, honor what you're getting. And so sometimes it might be, oh, the radio station's on a really intense music thing, or whatever it is, and we'll ask the host or hostess to turn the music down or off, or there's this cold breeze coming right at them. They're so aware of the frequency of information that comes at them, because much like you, much like me, they're sourcing information from all over the place. So the physical environment is going to affect them on a hypersensitive level, but also, much like me, much like you, and much like anyone that wants to put this kind of soul awareness to build it greater or put it to the test, is they're tapped in on all these different levels. These are the babies that are walking around laughing at nothing, or the kids that are just talking in the room with their imaginary friends, and just say, who are you talking to? Or, and sometimes they'll look at you like, wait, you don't see them? Why don't, of course you know, or whatever. And just say, hey, draw me a picture of who you're talking to, or whatever. Or don't be surprised. I remember one time I got a call from a parent that said, because I was saying, listen, I know the father had just passed, and I got that one of the kids were really tapped into the dad that had passed. And I said, please honor what this boy is saying. And the parents were driving, or the mother was driving with the grandfather, and all of a sudden they heard this little boy in the back seat, the sensitive psychic boy, click the other seatbelt. And they were like, what are you doing, Luke? And he goes, I'm buckling Dad in. Because he saw his father next to him in the car. And so they're like, good job. Obviously you're not going to say, well, he's not here. You're going to be like, good job. Because the more that we enter into their world and empower them accordingly in those spaces of contact with upper levels of higher conscious awareness, whether it's spirit contact or seeing angels or seeing Grandpa the past, or all of a sudden, an answer to a question that you've posed in your mind and heart, and all of a sudden they're coming up and laying out the answer, and you're like, whoa, wow. It's because they're tapped in and tuned in. And so I invite you to work with that in support of them for various reasons. One, for now, so that they feel comfortable in their skin and what they're knowing, and troubleshoot it and work with it. And when is it when is it an imaginative play, but when is it not? And it'll help empower them now and then far into their future. I want to tell you a story about one of my kids. My family, we were visiting my parents, and I said, we're going to take you guys to somewhere really fun. This will be so fun, but let's do a psychic game. I'm always into that. I'm going to think in my mind where we're going, and you just tell me what you get. We'll see what you get. And they went around to my younger son, and he was saying what he got, and I'm like, okay, yeah, no. Went to my daughter, I'm like, yeah, no. Went to my oldest son, and he started saying random things. I see a beach. We're in the middle of Iowa. I see a beach. I see bowling. I see an elevator. And then he mentioned some other things, and I was like, oh. And I'm thinking in my head going, no, okay, well. oh well. I was like, okay, good. Let's see what shows up to all of them. I was positive to all of them. I'm hoping like, oh, are they picking up that I'm like, whatever. We take them to where we're taking them. My parents had gotten us tickets to the Harlem Globetrotters. Big Easy was playing. It was really cool. And I'll be darned. Harlem Globetrotters. The whole basketball courtyard was the color of sand. Looked like a beach to me. They definitely bowled. They bowled, and I was like, my dad was like, I know, right? And I was going, see, good job, you got that. And everything he had said was ticked off except the elevator. And I was like, it's okay. Fast forward to 2019, and who am I in the elevator with? In St. Louis. I looked down and I was like, nice Globetrotters bag. And I look, and it was Big Easy. And I was like, oh, how did this kid... my brain is always like, so he didn't read my mind that we were going to the Harlem Globetrotters. He saw the future in what was going to happen, where we were going. And not only that, he saw the far distant future to what I would see, knowing that I would make the connection to what he was seeing in that moment. These kids are phenomenal. Mostly I'd be like, okay, let's see. I do that with students too. When I used to teach, and sometimes when I still teach, I say, okay, let's see. Because I tune into spirit and I say, is this right? And sometimes they'll say, we'll see. And so it's a surprise for me also. But I don't really think I ever say, no, I just say, let's see, you know? And so find out your proper words if you discover that you're sensitive and psychic child in your life, or you yourself has these experiences that you don't want to shut down. You don't want to shut them down, right? I want to get water. I want to give an example of an auric field. I'm going to ask someone to come up.
Hey, so in this video, you're noticing that I'm doing a demonstration with these copper rods. You can certainly make them from other bendable metals. It's really about the intention, but it's one of the fun games that I play when I'm working with developing kids' psychic abilities, whether it was my own children or in classes that I have taught in the past. And I want to encourage you to subscribe. If this was something intriguing to you and you want to know more, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or even subscribe to my podcast, the Constance Messmer podcast, because in those episodes on all the clairs and the empathic lectures that I have, they're individual and they each have individual exercises at the end of those lectures. We're also compiling kind of a overall exercise format so that you can just jump right to the exercises and skip the lesson. But I think it's best that you get the lesson down. So I think you're gonna have fun. I encourage you to play these fun games of unfolding with your kids to, you know, just validate their experiences, enhance their experiences, encourage their experiences, because they will also help make the world a much better place. And I think that you're gonna enjoy this, whether you choose to do it with your kids, or if you don't have kids, do it with your friends and family, loved ones. This is fun stuff. And sometimes people freak out, like how it's really cool and opens them up. So I want you to enjoy, and I'm really grateful for you. Thanks for tuning in.
Go ahead, come on. So if you'll stand there near the piano, this is the Harlem Globetrotter kid. He got them all, every little one. So I'm just gonna take these are rods. You can use copper. I use them on horses when I do energy work on horses. So I'm just gonna walk towards him. I should probably take my sleeves off. And I could look with my eyes, or I could sense with my hands, but I'm gonna walk towards him with the intention of having them splay at his, when I come to his auric field. It's pretty far, which is great. Can you turn sideways and put your arms out? And now put your arms up. So it's farther than his arms reach out. This makes sense to me. It makes sense to me, because you're like, give me space. All right. So that's all. I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to show you that you can sense energy. And this is a fun thing that I do with kids when I teach them about energy work, because it's visual, and they love this game. Because what I usually do, you can make these at home. What I usually do is I have the other kids, and you can do this at home, go up and feel with your hands, eyes closed, to sense the energy boundary, and then go up with the rods. Or actually have one person that senses energy that you know, like, ooh, this kid, I know, because he doesn't want anybody sitting around him. That's someone that senses energy. So have that kid maybe come in, sense the energy, leave the other kid that's also good at it out of the room, and then kind of remember on the floor where the kid sensed it, and then bring the other person in to try it with the rods or something like that, or try it with just sensing the energy with their hands. We all can feel energy. And this is just a fun game of working with children so that they can realize this is a real thing. They might sense it around food, they might sense it around animals, they might sense it around spaces. It's really important too that these kids get out into nature. There's going to be some that are really, I'm going to just say this, that are from other galaxies and are off planet. And they are more technically advanced, and so they have they're very innovative. They have, and a lot, I'm not negating the adults. I'm giving it another talk at another time about adults that are capable of all this too, but I'm talking about the kids, is they can be technologically advanced, mathematically advanced, and they're bringing in new ways of thinking and doing. And so these are kids that might have inspired thoughts or want to do inventions, let them work with them, whatever. And so sometimes they might be really want to game. You notice when it's becoming another way of zoning out an addiction, another way of hiding, or when it's a stress release. This is about you working with your kids. When is a stress release a gaming thing, or when is it a running thing or a playing thing? I'm a big proponent of out in nature, because there's this necessity of being grounded in the body, and playtime and nature and connecting. This is me hugging a tree, and feet in the sand, or holding the tree, or smelling flowers, or just going out after the rain and noticing the smell and asking them, what are all the different smells, what are all the different sounds, so to connect them with nature more readily. They're going to hear it, and they might hear things that you don't even hear. So these are all important ways to sink them in, much like the some type of meditative time, or the 5 minutes in the breath. My husband always asked me, can you teach kids to meditate just 5 minutes a day? I never did. Shame on Constance, whatever. We win some, we lose some. But I have encouraged them to, source answers. What do you think you should do, or what do you think's coming up for you? Do you remember that that lovely saying when you see kids having a meltdown or a breakdown or whatever, and it's that lovely phrase, halt, which means stop? And are they hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? I would add a fifth letter, H-A-L-T. I would add this French spelling, actually. I would use the French spelling, and I would say halt, H-A-L-T-E. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or is it an energetic issue? Are they energetically discombobulated? I think it's important. And so halt just means the same thing, stop and look what's happening, but just add the E for is it energetic. And then at that moment, it's really, and you might have heard me say this before, I give this often to empaths. Empaths are people that sense other people and places and things, the energy of it, whether it's they feel it on their skin, or they feel it emotionally, or they're reading mind thoughts, this kind of stuff, is the acronym awareness, breath, care. So if something's coming up, it's to stop and just have awareness that something's coming up. And then breath, taking a breath to just collect and ground and center, like. So I always teach people to just do both. Collect your energy and ground your energy. And it's a matter of visualizing that, to teach kids that, to tether them and connect them to the earth, because sometimes, like me, they're really not connected. And so sometimes it might be you putting your hands on their shoulder. So this is the awareness breath to collect them. And then care is, what do they need? And then maybe go to the H-A-L-T-E. But the care is, what do they need? Do they need a hug? Do they need quiet time? Do they need understanding because they're frustrated because you're not getting it, and they maybe not have the words? And so, can they draw a picture? different ways that you can help them source the answer. I am all about empowerment. I am all about empowerment. It's really empowering them. I half the time, more than, what am I saying, half the time? No, they know what they need. Just ask them. Sometimes I get these great ideas from spirit, but you can too. You can go, God, that was funny, Freudian slip. God, somebody help me. It's source energy, angels, whatever. Help me know the answer here. One of the great ideas that I got was to remind people to, when they're standing in a line and they know they have a sensitive kid, is to put the kid between both parents or both people So especially up close to the one behind them, so that you're creating a blockade. Because otherwise they're going to be picking up, especially if it's a tight line, they're going to be picking up all the energy around them, and maybe they need to be kind of barricaded and cushioned by two people that they love and trust that can watch out for it. So it really is about teaching you to fine-tune your psychic and soul skills so that you can better care for them in their world while they also help take care of you and yours. It's a pretty interesting combo. I do have available, I wrote this book called Some Dogs Talk. It's psychic development along the pages of non-creepy paranormal realistic fiction. And it is available. I think it's helpful because it is the journey of a young boy, Tony, and of him coming to grips with the fact that he has abilities, and like the ones I'm speaking to. And a lot of the stories are stories from my own life. I also encourage you or invite you to visit my website, constancemessmer.com. Links to all my stuff, especially the newsletter. And in the newsletter, I give some helpful hints that might not come out in the other content. And there's also links to my YouTube channel, which this will be a part of, and my podcast, which teaches about this stuff. I'm sure somewhere in my soul, there is look at me scan. I'm sure somewhere in my soul there's a book on helping kids. And there's a lot of help I want for kids. So, because I was a kid. And I know there's people in this room that fill the same shoes that, we all wish we had this when we were young to help us feel more comfortable, to sustain the power, to sustain the abilities that we knew that were innately a part of us. They're a part of everyone. And so sometimes we, just discount them, discredit them, maybe for various reasons. We were shut down, we shut it down, and now it's really time. It's time. It's time to embrace the full you, body and soul, superpowered as a soul being on the planet. So I'm gonna now open it up to questions, and I also wanna thank you so much for coming, but I'll say that again at the end. But I have a microphone. If anyone has a question, the microphone records your words into the video audio, but not amplifying into the room. Does anyone have a question on the material? Yes, just a sec. I'm also tuning into any other people that might be watching later at a distance. How cool is that?
I'm wondering if some of these kids, their behavior in particular, in schools and such like that, get put on the spectrum. Does that happen?
Yes, that's a great, you've come with great questions. Yes, I agree with you. And some of them are, and definitely would be diagnosed. Some of them would be diagnosed on the spectrum, not all of them. But yeah, I think some of them get lost in the shuffle. And I think that kids on the spectrum are astutely psychic and connected and sensitive. I think that is part of the spectrum experience, but I don't think that all kids that are psychic and sensitive are on the spectrum. But yes, I agree with you. They have to have certain fibers around them. They can't, touch is really different, and their perspective on the world is otherworldly and from a very different space of creativity or logic, or it as many kids as there are. There's so many.
I'm wondering, could you elaborate a little bit on? You talked about a child sometimes is high tech, high math.
Yeah,
but
science,
creative. But tends to be into you mentioned addiction or something.
No, I'm just saying watch out for when there's any addiction tendencies towards any kids, and to notice what's that about. Is it because they're trying to bury in? Are they running from what they're feeling? Are they feeling a lot and they're just trying to focus on something else so that they can take their mind out of it or take their mind away from it? I mean, I have to keep tabs on my own, like, oh, why are you eating? Do you really need this? Or why are you having, I drink alcohol on occasion. Why are you having this drink? What are you numbing something? And so the same with kids is that I would limit playtime on gaming. And just like I would limit, that time with my own kids. And then, because there's so much more that's happening in the world. And sometimes if they get hyper-focused on something, it does become a waste of time, and especially for them when they're supposed to have kind of a full parameter of experience. I feel for the kids that feel as if the world is a lost cause right now, environmentally and everything, because it's not. It's not. But yes, we all have to pitch in and help and wake up and shake up and make a difference and make a change at home, change in the local politics, change in national politics, change in behavior, change in purchase power, all of that. And so, I think, I'd rather the little scientists and the little mathematicians, instead of being lost in a gaming thing, have them build a computer. Do you know what I mean? Like, meet them where they're at. Let's go to the science museum. What do you want to do? Do you want to, what is it? Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One other little piece. You talk about this going outside thing. I'd read a long time ago that oftentimes the experience of going outside and seeing the horizon resets your spiritual and psychological presence.
I've never heard of that, but that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It's almost like a reset to the actual of the world.
I love that. I think that's a great point, because I know a lot of sensitive and psychic kids that definitely are sunset kids or sunrise kids that are like, yeah. I think that's the coolest thing, is when you really, try to teach the kids, what do you need right now? What should we do? In my home, we tried to do like, oh, you pick a meal each week and then you help make it kind of thing, to see, but I wish we would have done like, you pick an activity and we'll do it this week. It was a lot, we did a lot of like walks, but the kids were in a lot of sports and, whatever. We lived in the woods, so we always had to arrange play dates or bring them to play dates, which was always good, for them. But yeah, I'd watch out for some of them hiding out. Like, how do they hide out? If you're like, are they hiding out? How is that? Are they getting lost in books to avoid people? Are they getting lost in gaming to avoid other real interaction? Are they just filling time because they're not satisfied with fulfilling time? Well, that was a good statement. Anyone else with a question? Thanks.
What's our biggest takeaway if we don't have our own kids?
I think that the awareness of this should resonate with all of you, because as I look, I see very bright people. I see people that are empaths and sensitive and grew up like this anyway. So the takeaway should be is, how can I rediscover that childhood that maybe was feeling, and this is not directed at you, I'm just directing higher, that maybe felt unsafe or unpredictable or undescribable, or where there were embellishments or lies that flowed naturally. And so that's the healing process of, how can I take the skills that Constance has said and applied them to my own life so that I can renourish my soul going forward in this moment. And so I think also too, why did you have me say that? I think also too. Do I think also too, or do you think also too? I think also too, there's a reason that you're hearing it. And there's a reason, I think it's acceptance of this next wave of kids being born or kids born, and how our world needs to grow up with them and adjust and change maybe how we've done things in the past. I know that I have a child that went to Montessori. I'm a big fan of Rudolf Steiner. I know there's other opportunities, charter schools, public schools, finding the right fit, private schools, finding the right fit, and how can we be part of that, adjusting when we go to the voter's box or the whatever to go, yeah, I'm up on these items, and I want to help bring about the change that's needed for this next level of awareness and consciousness for these kids that are really, really soulfully astute and psychically astute. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Yeah. But mostly, too, I would love it if the takeaway for some adults that don't have kids in their life necessarily, to go home and maybe, I'm a big fan of journaling, it brings up subconscious material, to maybe go, what was, where do I fit in? What was my childhood like compared to what was being stated in the talk today? And where would I need different nourishment, or how did I need different nourishment? And, and then how can we, move to forgiveness in ways. Sometimes for me, it was just like my parents were, I watched how they lived their life, and I got to benefit from some of the ways they were, and some of the ways they weren't, and some of the ways I wish they were different, and some of the ways I'm grateful that how they acted. And, my dad was very psychic and very sensitive, but he didn't rely on it. He was more mathematically and intellectually inclined, very prayerful, very spiritual in that regard, but boy, he was a bundle of nerves, and I could sense it when I was sitting at the table. You could just feel it. And so, you can only teach what you can only teach. You teach what you know. And so now we laugh about it. Like, Dad, geez, why didn't you talk more about your emotions? And he's like, I didn't know how. I didn't know how. So if there's any kind of material that comes up when you're doing a suggested meditation or sitting time with your own self as a child or when you were young, and if there's disgruntled feelings that come up or uncertainties that come up, is to bring them to, parents, whether living in a loving way of like, I'm like, especially if you see that they're very sensitive and you're like, why didn't you tap into that? Or what happened there? Or what are you thinking? Or how do you use that in your life? Or what's that about for you? Or how do you notice it now? And then, but if they're on the other side, is, forgive and move on, because we only know, what we can know. And so, and especially because the physical world is so loud, right? It's so loud in the physical world. And so sometimes that's all people can handle, is just being in the physical world and not opening up or sharing all they're getting psycho-spiritually. And so it's really interesting that we're both, and yet what's in our face is the physical. The subtleties of the soul are, in my opinion, much more profound and much more empowering to carry through life once you develop them, because it can help you in all areas of your life. But you have to kind of go seeking and honoring and feeling and sensing and hearing and all of those things, all of the clairs and the empathic ways that I talk about in the book and on my teachings. So I'm really grateful that you showed up, that you're consciously connecting to your path and the path of people in your life, and really, doing that work and interested and contemplating. So I invite you and encourage you to continue the conversation. I think that if more people talked about this kind of stuff, the world would change. I know this in my heart, and so I want to bring it all mainstream. I want to bring it as part of conversation. And always in my work, I would say, how did you get that information? Did you feel it? Did you see it? Did you know it? Was it a goosebumps? Was it an emotional reaction? But I think we all know, I think we all know how to take care of ourselves on an energetic level. I think we just need to honor it. So, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. I really, really, really appreciate you. welcome. Thank you. You know, before I started this talk, I was like, what am I going to talk about? And I heard from, source energy, divine consciousness. Well, I'll give you three things. You're going to talk about HALT. And I was like, yeah, that was cool. Thanks for that. You're going to talk about ABC. And you're going to tell about your book and your website. And I was like, that's it? That's all I've got.
Legally speaking, this podcast is presented solely for educational, spiritual, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for medical diagnosis, treatment, or the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat a health problem or condition. Always check with your doctor. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed this episode with Constance Messmer, we'd like to encourage you to continue your spiritual journey with this next episode.